Oh, what the crap? Is that a guy?
The most terrifying encounters often happen when we feel the safest, like during a weekend camping trip. From sudden flash floods and headless figures, to graveyard shadows and unexplained lights over a camping ground. If you saw something you couldn't explain, would you keep watching? She was traveling alone late at night, carefully watching the road for a safe spot where she could pull over and rest. The highway felt unusually quiet, almost too quiet, when something unexpected suddenly happened. From the darkness, a man appeared without warning, running directly toward her truck and trying to get her attention.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. Can I please borrow a piece?
She had no idea what he wanted, but the way he rushed toward her immediately triggered a strong sense of danger. Without pausing, she trusted her instincts, climbed back into her truck, locked the doors, and got ready to drive away. In the end, nothing else happened. The man vanished back into the darkness, and she continued driving down the road. Even so, the moment stayed with her. Sometimes the safest choice is simply leaving before things become clearer. What was the man really trying to do out there in the dark? A group of friends had traveled to the Grand Canyon for a late summer camping trip. It is early afternoon when the video begins, recorded casually near a narrow side canyon not far from Tatahatso Beach. The sky above them looks mostly clear, with only distant clouds forming beyond the canyon rim. Within minutes, the mood changes. A low, distant rumble begins to echo through the canyon corridor, subtle at first, and then impossible to ignore. What had been an empty wash suddenly darkens as a surge of muddy water curves around the bend, carrying branches, rocks, and debris with surprising force. The water rises quickly, forced through the narrow rock walls with focused intensity. The group rushes toward higher ground as the once quiet channel turns into a moving wall of brown water. Their camera records only a few seconds of the scene before the image becomes shaky and the recording stops.
There's nowhere safe for us to go. Including getting moving. Our camp was right there. You see that waterfall? That was our camp. Nothing left. There's our capital calls. We don't have any rest. Oh my God.
Storms miles upstream had triggered the flood, unseen but powerful. If you were standing in that silent canyon and heard that distant roar growing louder, would you wait to watch it, or move immediately? The snow was deep across most areas, but sections of loose powder and concealed crevices lay beneath the surface. As they slowly made their way down, one member stepped onto a fragile patch that suddenly collapsed in an instant. He vanished beneath the snow, leaving only a single hand visible above the white surface, a chilling sign of the danger hidden underneath. The camera shakes as the friends rush forward, desperately trying to reach him. Panic spreads, yet they move fast, digging and pulling against the heavy weight of the snow. Shouts and urgent calls carry across the mountain, each second stretching longer as the snow presses down, unmoved by their struggle.
Okay, stop here. Oh, Jesus. Running. Hey, go to the mouth for a second. Hey, go to the mouth for a second.
The footage ends with the outcome still unknown, the hand barely visible while the rest of the body remains buried beneath the snow. If one small misstep can bury someone beneath cold, silent snow in an instant, the mountain may be far less stable than it appears. When the ground beneath your feet looks solid but might not be, would you keep moving forward or stop and turn back? The day was bright, and the canyon walls stretched long shadows across the water. Everyone was carefully following the instructions, except for one member, Mahu. Confident in his balance, he ignored the ropes and the warnings. He stepped forward onto rocks that were slick and uneven, convinced he could cross safely. In a moment, his foot slipped. He lost contact with the stable path and fell, tumbling down toward the river. There was no dramatic rescue, only a sudden fall that left the group frozen for a moment. The camera captures how quickly one small mistake can change everything. Soon the canyon returns to calm, the river flowing quietly as if nothing happened. For anyone watching, it's a reminder that ignoring warnings can have immediate consequences. If the signs were clear, would you still take that step? While hiking through the woods, a small group suddenly heard shouting echo through the trees. The voice sounded shaky and frightened, like someone desperately asking for help. They followed the sound off the trail and eventually found a man lying alone among fallen leaves and shadows. He looked weak and confused, and no one else was around. The forest felt strangely quiet as they realized he could not stand and had likely been there for a long time.
It's definitely somebody screaming help. I got you, bro. Whew. Oh, that's your buddy.
Oh, my knee is killing me.
Hold on.
Need me to call an ambulance, bro?
Night was approaching, the air growing colder, and animals moving nearby. If they had not heard him, he might have remained hidden, becoming weaker and more lost. Fortunately, the group stayed calm, called for help, and stayed with him. Sometimes simply being in the right place at the right moment can save a life. If you heard a distant call for help deep in the woods, would you follow it? Two friends were fishing late one night in the countryside of Turkey. It was quiet, the kind of silence where the water barely moved against the shore. No wind, no cars, only darkness stretching across the land. Then they noticed something moving near the edge of the water. At first they thought it was an animal, maybe a stray dog, but the shape stood too upright and too still. Locals have long spoken about a strange creature seen near lakes, swamps, and rivers. In the video, the figure shifts slightly and steps closer to the shoreline. The fisherman falls silent. Suddenly, the figure darts sideways into the tall grass, far too fast to clearly see. The water becomes still again, as if nothing had been there. Sometimes shapes in the dark are harder to explain than they seem. If you saw something like that watching you from the water's edge, would you stay and keep fishing, or leave before it moved closer? In parts of Africa, there is a legend about a spirit called the dust devil. People say it protects the forest and controls the wind. Some believe it is an ancient spirit that can move through the trees and vanish into the ground. One day, a group of tourists driving near a forest noticed a strange spiral of dust forming ahead of them. At first, it looked like normal wind, but then it began moving in a way that felt almost directed. Through the swirling dust, some thought they saw a dark shape shifting inside it. The wind grew stronger as they stepped back. The clip ends with the dust still spinning and the group unsure of what they had just seen. Many say it was only a natural dust vortex, but others still question it. If it was just wind, why did it seem to move with purpose? A family was driving along Old Mill Road near Pine Hollow Forest in West Virginia when their headlights revealed something standing ahead. A woman dressed in white stood in the road. Her neck was bent at a strange angle, long dark hair covering part of her face, and blood stained the front of her dress. For a moment, she remained perfectly still in the headlights. Then she moved. She didn't walk. She ran, somehow keeping pace with the car. One family member started recording as panic filled the vehicle. No matter how fast they drove, she stayed beside them. Some viewers believe the story may have been exaggerated or even staged, while others think something unusual might still have happened that night. If you ever saw something like that while driving alone at night, would you assume it was just a story, or leave the area immediately just in case? This disturbing clip was uploaded to the TikTok account, Gritos.nad 2.0. A boy and a girl went camping together for adventure. Late at night, driven by curiosity, they decided to explore an old graveyard nearby. At first there was no fear, only excitement, as they slowly walked through the darkness using flashlights to scan the area. As they moved deeper inside, they noticed a small hole in the ground and stepped closer. When they shined the light into it, they saw something inside. The figure had arms and legs, but its body looked unnaturally dark and distorted. When the light touched it, the creature reacted and looked directly at them in a strange, almost intelligent way. Fear took over instantly, and they ran. During the panic, the camera slipped from their hands and fell to the ground, and nothing else was recorded. What happened after that was never confirmed. Some viewers believe the clip may be staged, while others think something unexpected was really there. If you looked into a hole like that and something moved inside, would you stay and look again, or run immediately? While hiking through the woods, two friends laughed and kicked leaves, enjoying the quiet around them. The tall trees blocked most of the sunlight, and the air felt cold and still as they followed a narrow trail. One of them noticed a patch of dirt that looked strange, too smooth, almost as if something had been covered.
Remember that thing you asked me when we pulled into town? It was right when we were coming into Governor.
Yeah.
You said, "What's that building?" I said, "They used to store the bodies in here." I bet you were standing on an old mausoleum. Look, come here.
Okay, right there. That's a great job.
There's a grave right there.
Oh. Yeah, it's the edge.
Nearby, rocks were stacked oddly, and the ground dipped slightly. Suddenly, the forest went silent. No birds, no wind. The friends stepped closer as their hearts began to race. A torn piece of cloth stuck out from the soil. Then a branch snapped behind them, and they froze. They had found a grave, and it felt like someone did not want them there. Sometimes the forest hides things beneath the ground. If you discovered something like that while hiking, would you stay or leave right away? A group of hikers trekking through the mountains of Virginia were resting at the top of a rocky ridge, enjoying the view and catching their breath. The camera shows them laughing near the edge when a low rumbling sound begins beneath them. At first they think it might be an animal inside a cave under the rocks, maybe a bear or loose stones shifting. But the sound quickly grows louder. Suddenly a powerful roar bursts from below. It doesn't sound like a normal animal. The noise is deep and violent, echoing through the mountain like something massive trying to force its way out. The ground begins to move and small rocks start sliding down the slope. One hiker nearly loses his footing, and if another member hadn't grabbed him at the last second, he would have fallen down the mountainside. The video cuts as the group runs away from the ridge, while the roar continues echoing behind them. Some believe it was a rock slide, while others think it may have been something much larger. Sometimes natural sounds in the mountains can be misleading. If you heard a roar like that coming from inside the ground, would you stay to investigate or leave immediately? This is exactly why many people say never enter the forest alone after dark. What began as a quiet solo hike quickly turned into something far more unsettling. The creator was calmly filming the trail ahead when they suddenly began to feel it, the strange sense of being watched. At first it was only small sounds, leaves shifting and faint footsteps somewhere off the path. But every time the camera turned toward the trees, there was nothing there. Then something changed.
Yep. I can't go anymore. I'm leaving. What is that? It's a snake! The fuck is it? Dude, no! It looks like a person, man. But no person. It looks like a fucking person.
Deep between the trunks, something moved. Not clearly, not fully visible. Just a shape slipping from one tree to another. The way it moved didn't look like normal walking. The motion seemed smooth and controlled. It always stayed just out of clear view, almost as if it didn't want its face to be seen. You can hear the fear building as they slowly realize that whatever it is, it's moving with them. If something stayed hidden in the dark while following your steps, would you stop and face it, or keep walking and hope it disappears? After a family member passed away, her relatives began sorting through old boxes filled with photos. Most showed normal moments, smiling faces, birthdays, and quiet memories from years ago. Then they found one picture that felt different. In the upper corner, something strange appeared. At first it looked like a shadow, but the longer they stared, the more unsettling it became. The shape almost looked like a face hiding in the darkness, its mouth wide open with what seemed like sharp teeth, frozen in a silent scream. Even stranger, it appeared to be staring directly at the baby in the photo. No one remembered seeing anything like that when the picture was taken. Sometimes old photos create strange shapes when light and shadow mix together, but moments like this can still leave people uneasy. After seeing this image, would it make you feel uneasy looking through your own old photos? While hiking alone on a forest trail, a woman began to feel a strange heaviness in the air. The woods felt too quiet, and even the birds had stopped making noise. With each step, she felt more uneasy, as if someone was following her, but leaving no trace. Her heart started racing, so she pulled out her phone and began recording to feel safer. As she walked, faint whispers reached her ears that didn't sound like the wind. At first, she thought it was only her imagination. Then suddenly, a man's voice spoke clearly right behind her.
I was walking along this trail. I just heard the creepiest shit. Did you guys hear that? There's nobody out here. I keep hearing somebody. Hold on. There's no way, you guys. Oh my God.
She turned around, but no one was there. Fear took over, and she ran back the way she came without looking back. Sometimes silence in the woods can make small sounds feel terrifying, but moments like this still leave a strong impression. Would it make you nervous to hike alone in the forest? A climber records his team during their summit push on Mount Everest at about 8,300 meters high, deep inside the death zone just before sunrise. The camera slowly moves across a narrow ridge where several climbers are clipped to fixed ropes, sitting or crouched in place. Their suits are covered with frost and their oxygen masks are edged with ice. At first glance, they appear almost completely motionless against the pale blue morning sky. Some barely move their heads, while others do not seem to move at all. In the thin air and nearly minus 40-degree cold, even small movements require real effort. Through the camera lens, their stillness almost looks statue-like, as if the mountain itself has frozen them in place. The wind moves across the ridge while no one wastes energy speaking. As the light slowly grows stronger, a few climbers carefully stand and adjust their ropes to continue higher, while others remain seated to conserve what strength they have left. The video never shows a summit or a descent, only this quiet moment where time seems to pause. Sometimes in extreme places like this, climbers must stay completely still just to survive. Watching people sit silently at 8,300 meters in the freezing cold can still feel unsettling. Does seeing a place like this make you realize how dangerous Everest truly is? A man in Maiden was sitting outside during a quiet afternoon camping break, slowly drinking his coffee. The street was calm, the wind barely moving the leaves, and nothing seemed unusual. Then he noticed a lone figure walking slowly along the roadside. It looked like an older man carrying a black bag, moving with a calm and steady pace. But something about him seemed wrong. From the camera's angle, the upper part of his body appeared missing. It looked as if his head had vanished, leaving only a torso moving forward. The figure didn't stumble or stop. He simply kept walking, blending into the trees and light around him. The man filming didn't notice anything strange at first. Only later, while replaying the footage from his roadside camping moment, did he realize how unusual it looked. Sometimes shadows and angles can create strange illusions, but clips like this can still feel unsettling. Does seeing something like this make you feel uneasy about what might appear on a quiet road? A young man from Eskişehir, Turkey, had recently taken up fishing as a hobby. Motivated by a bet to catch the biggest fish, he became determined to prove himself. One night, he set up a small camping spot near a dam and placed a camera by the water's edge, patiently waiting in the dark. Around midnight, he noticed a fish so large it seemed almost human-sized, and he jumped into the water believing he was about to claim the prize. But what he encountered was far from normal. Instead of a fish, he came face to face with a strange humanoid-like creature. Its unnatural form and the violent struggle that followed nearly cost him his life. After that night, he never returned to fishing. He packed up his camping gear and went home, convinced he had seen something beyond explanation. Sometimes fear can shape how we remember strange moments, but stories like this still leave people uneasy. After hearing this from a quiet camping trip, how would you feel standing alone by dark water at night? It was late afternoon during a quiet camping stop by the river. One woman stepped into the shallow water to cool off, while a relative filmed from the bank. The water looked calm, the trees reflecting on the surface, and nothing suggested danger. It felt like a simple moment families often record during a camping trip. As she moved farther out, a large shape surfaced behind her. Within seconds, a capybara broke through the water and swam straight toward her. At first, she reacted with confusion and tried to push it away, expecting it to leave. Instead, the animal stayed close, circling her before suddenly jumping upward. It climbed onto her back and bit toward her head, turning the quiet river into panic. The camera shakes as shouting erupts from the bank while she struggles to free herself. What started as a peaceful camping swim ended in a moment no one expected. Wild animals can react suddenly when surprised near water. After watching something like this, how would you feel stepping into a quiet river where you cannot see what might be behind you? It was deep into the night during a quiet camping trip when the recording begins. The only light comes from a small campfire and the beam of a handheld flashlight. The man behind the camera says he woke up after hearing low, almost human-like growls and sharp cries coming from somewhere beyond his camping tent. He steps outside to investigate while keeping his phone recording. The flashlight beam cuts through the darkness, lighting up tree trunks and patches of undergrowth, as the strange sounds continue in the distance. As he walks farther from the tent, his breathing grows heavier. Then, near the edge of the light, a tall silhouette appears between two trees. It stands upright, narrow at the shoulders, and strangely still before shifting slightly deeper into the woods. The man stops, the flashlight shaking as he tries to keep the shape in view. For a moment, it remains partly hidden, neither approaching nor leaving. Suddenly, the camera jerks as he turns and runs, footsteps filling the recording before the video cuts off. In dark forests during camping trips, shadows and distance can sometimes create confusing shapes, but moments like this can still feel unsettling. After watching this camping encounter, how would you feel standing alone outside your tent at night? A young man went deep into the woods for a quiet camping trip, hoping to spend the night alone with nature. At first, everything felt calm, but sometime after midnight he heard something strange, the sound of a child crying somewhere in the forest. The sound was faint, but clear enough to stop him in his tracks. Ignoring his instincts, he picked up his camera and followed the crying deeper into the woods during his late-night camping walk. As he moved closer, the crying became louder. Through the trees, he saw something disturbing. Behind a thick tree trunk stood a woman with long hair covering her face, with what looked like a small child in front of her. From where he stood, the air suddenly felt heavy and wrong. Then the crying stopped. A moment of silence followed before the man screamed. The camera dropped to the ground and the footage shook violently before going still. The video ends there with no explanation of what happened next. Sometimes darkness and fear during camping can make situations feel far stranger than they are, but moments like this still leave people uneasy. After hearing a child crying alone in the woods at night, would you go looking for it? In the middle of the day, a man walked deep into the forest during a quiet camping trip when he noticed a massive snake coiled around something in the bushes. Its body was thick and stretched across the ground like a fallen tree. Without hesitation, he raised his rifle and fired. The shot echoed through the woods, but the snake didn't die. Instead, it lifted its head and looked directly at him before slowly beginning to uncoil and move toward the trees. Panicked, he kept shooting until the snake finally collapsed. But when he stepped closer, he realized something disturbing. Whatever the snake had been wrapped around was gone. Some viewers believe clips like this could be edited, especially when the scene feels too unusual to explain. But even if a video might not be real, the image it leaves behind can still feel unsettling. After seeing something like this from a camping moment in the forest, would the thought of what might be hiding out there still stay in your mind? A husband and wife were driving late at night along a quiet, isolated road. There were no streetlights and no other cars, only darkness stretching ahead of them. Everything seemed normal until suddenly something appeared directly in front of the vehicle. For a brief moment they both saw it, and fear hit instantly. Later, when they checked the car's camera footage, the image looked even more disturbing. The figure on the road appeared almost human, but not quite. Its shape resembled a person standing upright, yet something about it felt wrong. The way it moved and the way it appeared and vanished so quickly did not resemble a normal pedestrian. There was also no sign of anyone else nearby. Locals said similar incidents had been reported on that same road before. Several drivers claimed they had seen human-like figures appear suddenly at night, only to disappear seconds later without leaving any trace. Sometimes lighting, shadows, or even modern video tools can create strange images, especially on dark roads near camping areas. But moments like this can still leave people uneasy. On a quiet day in May 2008, a family in Ravenna, Ohio shared a photograph that later made many people uneasy. The picture had been taken inside their home by the owner's 14-year-old son. When the family reviewed the image later, something unusual appeared. In an upstairs window stood what looked like a young girl. The figure had the shape of a real person and seemed to be wearing a blue outfit while staring outward. At the time the photo was taken, only the mother and her son were inside the house, and there were no young girls in the family. The house, built in the early 1930s, was also known for strange noises and uneasy feelings. Some believe the image could be caused by reflections or editing, possibly shared online after everyday moments like family visits or nearby camping trips. Still, the photo leaves many people unsettled. How would you feel seeing something like that appear in your own pictures? While hiking through the woods during a quiet camping trip, a man followed a narrow trail where tall trees leaned close, almost as if they were listening. The air felt strangely silent, and every crunch of leaves echoed through the forest. Near a fallen log, he noticed something unusual. A small doll sat upright, smiling stiffly. Its shiny eyes seemed to stare back from the trail. The toy looked a little like a character from Toy Story, but older, dirtier, and strangely unsettling. One arm was raised, frozen in a wave that never seemed to end. A cold feeling crept up the hiker's back as the forest suddenly grew still. How would you feel if you found something like that watching you from the trail? A farmer in rural Mexico began noticing something unusual around his land. His caretakers refused to go out after dark, and when he asked why, they avoided the question. After days of silence, one of them finally spoke. He said that before sunrise, he had seen a woman standing alone among the crops. At first, he thought she was trespassing and walked toward her, but when she slowly turned around, her face looked unnatural. Her eyes seemed hollow, her cheeks sunken, and her skin stretched tightly over bone. When she opened her mouth to scream, he noticed a forked tongue. After that moment, he said his memory went blank. The farmer didn't believe the story, so he began patrolling the farm himself at night while recording. On the second night, he captured something standing between the crop rows, a tall, thin figure barely visible in the darkness. The video ends just as the shape begins to move toward him. Sometimes shadows and distance can create strange shapes in dark fields during quiet nights outdoors or camping nearby. But after seeing something like that moving through the crops at midnight, how would you feel standing there alone? It was recorded on a Sony Handycam TRV-36 Hi8, and the footage has a grainy look like an early 2000s recording. The video shows an empty playground at night. No children, no wind, only the faint hum of the camera capturing the quiet scene. Long shadows stretch across the ground as a tall yellow slide stands alone in the dim light. The camera slowly moves closer. At first, everything appears normal. The ladder, the platform, and the dark tunnel at the top. Then something changes. From inside the slide, a solid white shape begins moving downward. It doesn't slide like a person or tumble like an object. It simply descends slowly through the tunnel, a blank white form drifting closer to the exit. The camera holder stays silent, but their breathing becomes heavier. Just before the shape reaches the bottom, the recording suddenly cuts to black. After seeing something like that sliding toward you in the dark, how would you feel standing there alone? In the middle of a dark forest, a horror content creator walks slowly along a damp dirt path lit only by his camera's flashlight. Insects hum in the distance while tall trees block most of the moonlight. The quiet surroundings feel tense as he continues filming. Then he suddenly stops. Standing in the center of the trail is a white figure wrapped from head to toe, completely still and facing him. For several seconds, neither of them moves. He tries to convince himself it might just be cloth caught on a branch. Then, without warning, the figure jumps backward. It doesn't turn or make a sound. Instead, it slides several meters back in one strange motion, still facing the camera. His breathing grows heavier, and his hand begins to shake. The flashlight shifts for a moment, and when the beam centers again, the white figure is gone. Camping in deep forests at night can sometimes play tricks on the mind. Shadows, distance, or camera angles can make ordinary things look strange. But seeing something move like that in the darkness would still feel terrifying. After watching this clip, what was your first reaction? A group of friends had been camping on a remote island off the western coast of Australia. It was early evening just before sunset when one woman began recording the horizon. The sky was clear, the tide calm, and the others were sitting behind her near their tents. No one stood in front of the camera, and no human shadow stretched across the sand. As she slowly zoomed in on the sinking sun, a faint shape appeared inside the bright glare. It wasn't a clear silhouette and didn't look like a normal shadow. Instead, it appeared fragmented, almost pixelated around the edges, suspended directly against the sunlight. The shape did not move like a bird or aircraft. It seemed fixed in place where nothing visible should have been. When she adjusted the zoom again, the form flickered and disappeared into the light. The final seconds show only the sun setting normally over the ocean, with no movement on the beach. After watching this clip, what was your first thought? A group of friends were out in the fields recording a couple of deer. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The animals moved quietly through the grass while the group filmed from a distance. Then something unexpected suddenly rushed across the camera frame. At first, they assumed it was another deer, but within seconds they realized it was far larger and moving much faster than anything they had been watching.
All right.
How'd you track him?
There's 2 more black dots. Cody. Oh, what the crap? Is that a guy? What the frick?
What the fuck?
What?
Follow him.
I videoed it. What the frick?
The shape looked strange, muscular and looming, almost humanoid in its outline, yet dark enough that no clear details could be seen. It moved quickly through the field, partially hidden by shadows and tall grass. The friends froze as they tried to keep the camera steady. Their nearby camping camper sat in the background, the quiet scene suddenly feeling tense and uncertain. For a moment, no one moved. Curiosity held them there even as the shape disappeared behind the grass. When it was gone, their hearts were racing. None of them could tell if it had truly left or if it was still somewhere in the field. After watching this moment, what do you think it could have been? Off the coast of Vancouver, a strange light suddenly appeared in the sky. The footage was recorded from a boat while people were camping out on the water. A bright horizontal line slowly formed across the clouds. It moved steadily and maintained the same brightness the entire time, before disappearing without any visible trace. There was no clear object, no sound, and no flashes of lightning, just a glowing line suspended above the water for a brief moment. Some viewers believe it could be a rare atmospheric phenomenon, while others think it might be some form of unknown technology. The clip is presented exactly as it was captured, with no edits, filters, or added effects. If you had been on that boat watching it happen, what would you think it was? One winter night, a man sat inside his car on a lonely road beside a forest. Snow had fallen heavily, covering the ground in thick white silence. The engine was off, and everything around him felt frozen, like a quiet night outdoors or camping nearby. Then he heard it, a long, mournful cry stretching through the darkness. At first it sounded far away, almost peaceful. But as the echo moved through the trees, the sound began to feel strange and deliberate. The howl came again, closer this time. It wasn't just a normal call. A low growl, a sharp bark, and then that drawn-out cry blended together. His breath fogged the windshield as he tried to see through the snow. That's when he realized the sound wasn't moving away. It was slowly circling. He locked the doors, heart pounding. The final howl came right beside the van, vibrating through the metal. But when he looked outside, there were no tracks in the snow, only endless white silence. Hearing something circle that close without leaving tracks would still feel disturbing. If that happened to you, what would you think was outside? At first, he took the forest road simply to get home faster. Nothing seemed unusual, but he began recording because the road felt strangely quiet. After a few minutes, an uneasy feeling appeared, as if something was following just outside his view. When he pointed the camera ahead, a white figure stood motionless between the trees, tightly wrapped and completely still. He tried to convince himself it was only a shadow or a trick of the light.
Detik-detik.
Men, tinggi banget ini, men.
Bang Boy, yes.
Di atas permukaan tanah,
Dikejar
cuy.
kun-kun.
Hei! Kamu apa itu di situ diam? Maju sini! Permisi! Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al qayyum. Allahumma shalli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Allahu akbar astagfirullahaladzim. La anta subhanaka inni kuntu minadul min. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al qayyum. La ta'ulu sayyatu wa.
Then another shape appeared from the side of the frame. It seemed to float above the ground, long black hair covering its face as it moved forward in an unnatural glide. Moments later, it began moving toward him faster than expected. The video ends when the camera falls as he runs, leaving only a shaking view of the spinning forest. Sometimes darkness and camera movement can create shapes that look frightening. But after seeing something like that moving toward you in the forest, what would you think it was? On one of their road trips, they noticed a van with a sticker that immediately caught their attention. The message read, "Don't make this weird, get in the van," which felt unusual to see while driving down the highway. When the photo was shared online, reactions were quickly divided. Many people found the message creepy and inappropriate because of how it could be interpreted. Others dismissed it, saying the van looked normal and the sticker was probably meant as dark humor or an edgy joke. Still, one question remained. If it was meant to be funny, why choose a message that might make strangers uncomfortable? The video begins in total darkness, deep in the woods at night. A shaky flashlight beam cuts through the black, revealing pieces of trees and the empty forest floor. The air feels heavy and silent, the kind of quiet people sometimes experience during late nights outdoors or camping in remote forests. Then the light lands on a large, twisted tree trunk. That's when something becomes visible. Clinging to the bark is a tall, shadowy figure with pale gray skin. Its limbs look extremely thin, and long fingers grip the wood as if it is part of the tree itself. The figure does not move or react. It simply stays there, blending into the rough surface of the trunk as light and shadow nearly hide it. The video ends with the flashlight shaking while the camera remains fixed on the unmoving shape. Sometimes shadows or camera angles in dark forests can create strange illusions. But if your flashlight revealed something like that on a tree, how would you react? Late one night, a woman walking her dog stopped to admire the stars. She decided to take a couple of photos. At the time, nothing seemed unusual. Later, when she showed the pictures to her boyfriend, they noticed something disturbing. The first photo showed an empty street, but the next image, taken only seconds later, revealed a dark human-shaped figure standing in the same spot. The woman insisted she had been completely alone with her dog and that the photos were not edited. Sometimes lighting or camera timing can create strange shapes in pictures, but seeing a figure appear between two photos taken seconds apart would still feel unsettling. If it happened to you, what would you think it was? That's all for tonight's video. Which encounter gave you chills? Let us know in the comments below. Got your own experience? We want to hear it. And whatever you do, don't miss what's coming next.